we're going to do today, we've got another 4 sessions next week. So I thought we thought it'd be a good idea to run through with the development group what we've done so far, and then you can maybe give us a steer on what we're getting right and what we're getting wrong, and probably add some input as well. So if we can, right. So this is the points and.
Richard, sorry, can I just interrupt just for a second? I just wanted to ask if everybody on the call is aware of what these questions are about. And if not, would you like me to just explain briefly why we're doing it? Could you sort of, is there anybody on the call that doesn't know what these questions are about? No. Okay, that's good.
Okay, so the first question was how do we... Sorry?
I guess we'll press on, that's what I was saying. Sorry, I'll shut up now. Sorry, Richard.
How do we prevent incorrect design, selection and installation of fire safety products? So the overall considerations are around competence, an online register and the role of the insurers. So have we got some replies on that, Jess? Let's scroll down. Are you there? Jess, are you there?
Yep.
Can you scroll down a bit to the to Roxy's notes on it? Okay, so these are the high point notes which have been attached to each section with highlighted any kind of answer. We didn't get hows to everything, but to some of it. So if we have a national occupational standard for a particular trade, then ultimately that could be the accepted recognition that you've got these standards. Is there anything else, Jess, on this one? Yeah. Right. Now, Chris Hall was saying that basically the training and setting up the standards and the qualification for this is all underway through the ASFP. They've been working with the IFS and have created a fire sector safety group. And they're looking to publish standards on installer competency, and they're working on designer competency. So basically what he's saying is that it's in process. I think we asked him and he said it was going to be another year, but it's in process. I'm not sure what just scroll down again just to see if there's anything else. Yeah. Right, assessing everyone's individual and organizational capacity to act as a designer, and specifically looking at fire safety as a bespoke element of design work. So that's something they're actually doing themselves. Sarah Stevenson's company. Scroll down a bit more, Jess. Yeah, Chris Hall again reiterated, we're working on design competency as we speak. Anything else, Chris? Jess? Okay. The latest thinking that we're doing is linking task-based activities to continuous updates of competency built upon those frameworks and qualifications. Right, which frameworks and qualifications? So, maintaining an online register recording responsible, competent individuals and their decisions would be part of the how to fulfill that question, that first section of the question. Chris Hall, the ASFP scheme will include a registration as well. So the idea is that the competence, just see if there's anything else just on that one. A lot, isn't there? Yeah, George spoke on behalf of Alistair Brockett, who said it would be a good idea to encourage the use of the LPC, which is the new name, that's the Loss Prevention Council. Anybody got any comments on that? That's all around the competency side of this issue. Basically, Chris Hall saying that it's in hand, and Sarah Stevenson saying, okay, well, this is what we're doing already while it's in hand. They've gone quite a way actually along the path for validating competency. Has anybody got anything to add to that? George, have I missed anything out on that on the competency side?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, the last section was around, the last part of that was around utilising the insurance companies. And how do we do that? Well, obviously we talked to them. George, you're already doing that, aren't you?
Yes, we're speaking with brokers, specialist brokers, who what we're trying to do is to work with them to see what information is likely to be accepted by the actuaries. So we've got 3 specialist insurance brokers involved in that. If anybody's got any suggestions on that, then that would be welcome.
Okay, right, we'll move on to the second thing, which was considerations at planning stage. Now, this was around contractual agreements and planning and design. Okay, so what have we got here? Will Cousins, talking in terms of design and build, what he did recently was a 2-stage tender with a PCSA, so it's going to be design and then build. And if I remember correctly, the meeting was pretty unanimous in saying that that's the way that it's going to be, and it's going to have to go in that direction. Do you want to scroll down a bit more, Jez? Okay, Will again. In terms of the contract, we basically don't get into a contract until you get your gateway to submission. So we've got a year tender process. Is that longer than it would normally be? Or is that a reasonable amount of time?
I think, yeah.
Paul.
Yeah, there's a government procurement guidance that with a forward by Judith Hackett came out in January a year ago, just over a year ago, that says that when you go into a build contract, you want to try and get the PC involved as early in the design stage as possible, so they can support the PDs in identifying the challenges in the construction of that design.
Right,
try and figure out those out before. I mean, I can circulate the link to that. It's on the government website.
If you wouldn't mind, yeah, if you put that in the chat for me, that would be very, very helpful. That's well, this is the purpose of this meeting, obviously, to get just to get a bit more meat on some of these bones.
Where are you from, Paul?
I'm from Peabody Housing.
Ah, cool. Thanks. Well, what do you do there? Are you in design or project management? I'm
a health and safety manager. Before we amalgamated, I was a catalyst before. Before we amalgamated, I was health and safety manager and did fire safety as well for the business. So since Grenfell, I was
Yeah.
running around like a two-headed dog, as you can imagine, until they recruited some more.
Absolutely. Good. It's good to meet you.
Okay, just scroll down a little bit more. Right, new contractual forms will arise out of the requirements of the Building Safety Act. This was, again, Chris Hall was saying that basically to some extent it's going to be organic because it will happen out of necessity rather than out of someone actually taking a positive decision to do it. Scroll a bit down further, Jess. Right, that's all for that stage. Anybody got any comments on that? Is the contractual side?
I have, and that is that this we've been working through this now for almost a year, and some of the changes that are going to be brought in, they're going to have to be brought in by the new legislation are profound, and the point that that's covering is the basically the change in PCSAs and design and build, because subcontractor design portion is or contracted design portion is something that needs to be done before the end of Gateway, before Gateway 2. So the significance of that is fundamental as far as procurement's concerned. And what was interesting from that meeting that we had last week on this is that, as Richard said, Will Cousins from Metropolitan Thames Valley, he said that that's what they're doing now. David Pote from Notting Hill Genesis said that they are also discussing that at the moment. And we're also finding in the marketplace, main contractors are also moving that way because the risk is just too high to go into construction without the design being nailed, because that could have a massive impact on delays. So just before we move off that question, has anybody else got any experience on the call? Is that something, Paul, that you've heard Peabody are doing?
We're just about starting our first tall building project under BSA, so we're still finding our way along the line, like most people, I think, including the regulators.
Yeah.
But the challenges we've got in procurement and appointing the right people is mostly around the PD for building regs.
Yeah.
Because there's no history, there's nothing to base our benchmark on.
Yeah.
It's our best endeavours, if you like, in trying to get that sorted. And unfortunately, we've got a design and build contractor involved in that, and their view is, well, to try and get the tendering process done 2 weeks before submission is okay, and I don't think it is. I think it's going to be a lot of delays on that one. But we've got to wait and see what goes on. We're working with the regulators as closely as we can, but it's the whole procurement process is up in the air because there's new law as well now. There's a new law that came in October last year, the new Procurement Act, or procurement regulations, and that comes into effect in October this year. For me, as a health and safety practitioner, I base all of my procurement assessments on because I'm also CHAS trained on CHAS assessments. So I'm looking at health and safety and compliance and competence to carry out the work, and that's slightly different from what other people in the process are looking at and understand. So it's all I think it's best if we talk amongst ourselves and try and get the best ideas if we've got experience with regulators as to what the regulators thinking and doing, because I don't think they have a firm idea yet.
That's definitely the purpose of these sessions, and what we're doing with this. That was the context in which I was asking whether people are aware of what we're doing. We're going to be feeding the inputs from the outputs from this back to the regulator.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, the regulators aren't going to be explicit in terms of what they are wanting. So they're expecting the industry to come up with it. And I think that's the only way it's going to work. But the industry, there isn't a coordinated view. To my knowledge, I think we're the only ones, as BIM4Housing, we're the only ones that are actually doing this. So that's why we've picked these particular topics. So I think what would be very useful is when we finish this, you'll find it very interesting to read the notes that people like David Pote and Will and others have made on this. And obviously any contributions that you could make would be very, very welcome.
I'll do my best.
Thanks. Have we got any other developers on? Rebecca,
Yeah,
where are you from?
have.
Rebecca Franks? I think she's perhaps gone for a coffee.
Benedict, aren't you with the developer?
I think we're not getting a lot of feedback.
I think this is your meeting, Georgia. They've just signed on and skipped up on a jolly.
Carry on.
Right, considerations at design stage. So, in terms of planning and design, products and information standards, scroll down just. Risk assessment and quality assurance. Right, what comments have we got here? Scroll down just.
Yeah, one of the comments there is that there's concern about manufacturers becoming seen as designers, which that's we need to get them involved earlier, but it's got to be in the context where they don't end up with the design responsibility. And I guess that's what Paul's saying. The principal designer is such a critical role in this, isn't he?
Okay, this is a comment on. Sorry, go.
Hi, my name's Jess Ward. I'm a program manager at A2 Dominion Housing Association. I was just going to chip in really where to start, but with the interesting listening to the conversation around the principal designer, we have architects that we work quite closely with who've positioned themselves and demonstrated competency by being signed up to the REBA approved list for PD and things like that.
Yeah.
We've also got design and build projects and contractors who are sort of gathering their architects that they can work with to provide that PD role. So it's not all being approached in the same way. But I would say that with regard to the product suppliers, we do have a large cladding remediation project where this has become a bit of an issue where the product manufacturers have been very engaging on the systems that we're going to use. It's a big enough project for them to offer a lot of design support, but when push comes to shove, are they going to provide the warranties for that? And that's a whole different ball game.
Absolutely. Okay, so this next point is around using digital tools. Specifiers should be using digital tools. Keep going then, Jess. Okay. But in terms of the integration of products and assets, that will be largely done through classification and structure of the information, so that systems are properly classified and the asset types that are parts of the systems are properly classified so that they can be properly integrated. Okay.
So
yeah, to expand on that, George.
yeah, well, I think that's an answer to the question. Part of the challenge that we're being asked to consider is how we're actually going to be gluing all this stuff together. And what I'm saying there is that if we follow the detail of how things should be properly classified and structured, then it all comes together. The question is that being policed? And therefore we need to improve the process of really ensuring that people are held to account on that. Because if something hasn't been properly classified, both in terms, I don't mean just the product, but how it's being used in the building. So spaces have got classification, systems have got classifications. So rather than using just the description of that somebody happens to put in a BIM model, actually the classification enables it to be glued together. So that was it, really.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, scroll down, Jess.
Yeah, we just to explain that we had somebody on from who's one of the specialists in product information and GS1 and that type of classification. So he was talking extensively about having unique identifiers, which I agree with.
Okay, move down, Jess. Okay, the peg, and George Thompson was saying that the peg, the key that holds this peg together in terms of the information thread regarding maintenance information, procurement information, and basically everything, again, it needs to be this unique identifier because there's nothing back to tie back to otherwise, which I think makes sense. Yeah, scroll down again, Jess. Okay, so has anybody got to add anything? Has anybody got anything to add to that section? Okay, right. This section was around at its installation stage. The point is a thorough risk assessment is essential to optimal installation. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay. Installation, mandatory installation accreditation should be implemented. Any disagreement on that one?
Is there anybody on the call that's actually, I think, John Morrow, I think you've been on some of these sessions, haven't you?
Yeah, I've cut quite a few of them.
I'm just wondering if there's people on the call that have already contributed to this, whether you think what we're trying to do is finalise. It may seem challenging, but it is challenging. We're bringing together expertise we've had over 100 people look at these, and I think we've got a really good set of information. But obviously, before we send it through to Deluxe, we want to make sure that you've all had the chance to comment on them.
Also, we didn't finish all of the questions, like this one. The second part, mandatory installation accreditation should be implemented. So the question is how? How do we implement it? Edward?
I wasn't going to answer that question.
Of course not.
Because it's me. But it was more about, actually, we needed some kind of framework around how exactly do we record all of this, because we're going to do all these things, but we needed some agreed protocol, say this is what we record and all the rest. That's very important to wrap around all of this. And then I suppose when it comes to accreditation, we've got to apply similar frameworks to the ones we have in place for product testing and quality control. And there are installer schemes already in place in many sectors, not just fire safety. And it's about how do we mandate those? And that's, do we go down the gas route, the electrical route, where you can't work on these things unless you got the ticket?
So it already exists, this accreditation.
There's accreditation systems in place for fire stopping.
Fire door installation. There's accreditation now.
Yeah, but they're not mandatory in the same way that working on a gas appliance is. It is mandatory to be on one of those, a member of one of those installer schemes, and likewise for electrical works, Part P works. Right. It would require legislation, wouldn't it? Is the bottom line, if it's going to be mandatory.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, BM trial is one example of that, Richard.
No. I'm thinking of your story of the new build that they inspected the fire doors that have been installed, and 75% of them didn't pass.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's why I was querying about the accreditation. Does it actually work?
We normally, within our ERs and a lot contractor procurement documentation, that's one of our requirements for fire door installations, for instance. But then, as part of that process, we use a third-party assessor to review the actual installation, because, as you suggest, we've gone with some of the largest providers across the country with door sets that have primary test certification in, and we have still found issues. And I think of one scheme without naming the address. I would say 70% of the door sets were not up to scratch. There were issues, and yet they were with supposedly accredited installers.
Yeah, I think part of the issue that I've certainly heard criticism of is, for example, BM Trada. I've no idea if that's a good scheme or not, but it's obviously widely implemented. But the person that's actually doing the install doesn't need any accreditation. They need to work with somebody that does have it. That's my understanding. So
that's what happens in reality. I think you're quite correct. That's what we found, because we are saying that this installers have to super accredited, BM Trada being one, and then this instance I'm referring to, that was exactly the case. But I think what the reality is on the ground, as used to happen with gas installations, you would have fitters carrying out the install, and then one licensed individual signing the commissioning certification. on all 20 or 30 or 40 installations of whatever it might be. And I think a similar thing is happening here now with the doors.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Because the level of the quality of workmanship on the doors, the scheme I'm referring to, was shockingly bad.
Rebecca.
Hello, yeah, I was just going to agree, really, because we've been working with our contractor to get them BIM4Housing accredited. And what I found out through the process, one accredited installer can then oversee 20 installers underneath them.
Yeah.
So they can't get around and monitor 20. Obviously, BIM4Housing seem to think they can, but that's one of the problems we're encountering. It's subject to who fits the doors. And that's where the problems lie, because they're just, I think it's too broad, personally.
Penjo.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, just like to say that I previously mentioned this. Obviously, in our specification, we actually specify how many. So one supervisor, how many actually, the number of the operatives that it can actually supervise. So we already actually put that in place as a contractual agreement. So we just strengthened that BIM4Housing. And just to mention, it's not just fire doors, it's all across the fire stopping as well. So PFP accreditations, I have actually seen situations where there's operative with zero backgrounds in fire stopping, and just because they've been put on a list, on a training list, it's allowed by the accreditation body to actually operate and to install fire stopping product, not even supervised on site on that day. And it's absolutely acceptable, which is shocking.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it, really, at this stage of the game?
But I think what we have done, it's obviously it's not very proactive kind of approach, is just to specify those kind of individual requirements through that training matrix. So we specify specifically what is it that we want from the company accreditation point of view, but also individuals. So we have set of specific requirements for the supervisors, what sorts of training and accreditation they need to meet. And then obviously we have every single person from that chain really on board. But yeah.
Yeah, Jess, do you want to put the next question? Excuse me.
Yeah, just before
up.
me about Richard, can I just
Sorry,
say, yeah. So I had a discussion with Land Securities about this a couple of weeks ago, and what my contact was saying is that he's trying to build into all their projects. There's an inspection, a rollback. He told me that the fire door installation then has got to be inspected by a third party afterwards. And what he's saying is that that he wants to bring forward the fire door inspection, the independent third party, which I think is what John was saying. The independent third party should be doing the inspection before handover. And he's getting pushback from his procurement people because that's increasing the price. Yeah. And he's obviously trying to stand up to that fact. Does that make any sense with anybody on the call?
There's definitely a cost implication for that. That's what we've done previously to resolve issues. The fact that it's underwritten by a third party brings a certain level of assurance, but in every instance where we've procured their services, where we haven't been able to do it within our own, we've got specialist fire safety surveyors, where we've always found issues, and it's always been very difficult to get them to resolve issues, one, to acknowledge to them, and then to resolve them. Because of, we make it, was obviously we won't take occupation. It's part of the FRA process. So we wouldn't take occupation without their matters being resolved. But it's difficult.
But to answer this particular point, which seems to be a common problem, if for example, you know, most developers like you and, you know, obviously, you know, Peabody, and I don't know where you're from, Rebecca.
I'm local government, so I manage. Yeah, I'm building safety manager, so I've managed 23 buildings now.
Well, that's for a council.
For Hull City Council.
Yeah. So if for example, it became a recommendation through our community that there ought to be a third-party inspection of every installation, then that could make it easier to, you know, for people like the guy from Land Securities to get that through, because it becomes it's best practice, because best practice is what people should be working towards. Does that make any sense?
It does. The problem is, if you've got an accredited installer undertaking the works, then in theory you shouldn't need a third party to go signing off accredited works. And that's why, because that's one of the things we was working with, and that's what I've developed, because we had, say, door installers, which were just joiners, but then we had a third party coming in and signing off each individual door. So that's why we've gone down the BM4Housing accredited route. It's only obviously going through that process that I found out I think only 3 people now in the organisation who are accredited, but they're then managing sort of tradespeople underneath them. It's to what extent I agree with it, and I like the idea of the third party sign off. It's just, what competence level will they have to be able to do that sign off?
Yeah. Pencho. Sorry, Richard.
Just like to echo Rebecca, and just like to say that yesterday I have completed a fire door review, another desktop review for our scheme. And what I noticed, and I'd like to share with you, is the IFC certification scheme. That is the S4 certification scheme. And what is interesting in the scheme is that they are actually sending auditors to audit the contractor just from random site inspections, and I have received the report, and this is the first time I actually see that much I mean this kind of level of details in the report, not just inspecting the workmanship, but more crucially the certification, whether or not the door installing on site is the door that is been specified and it aligns with the certification for that door. But yeah, I think the third-party accreditation, maybe we can actually specify that we need those kind of audits to see that they're actually being audited. Because what is the point of having a third-party, installer if we're not 100% sure they're actually doing their job, if the supervisor is not doing their job, if the operatives are not recording what's supposed to be recording. So a little bit more strict kind of specifications. This is what we need. These are the approved accreditation schemes. And we already know that if the contractor is to that scheme, they will capture this kind of level of detail. They are required to produce reports at the end of the installation, capturing before and after photos and all the level of details. But yeah, just like to share, to say IFC have good scheme.
But obviously, from the answers we've had further up the page, that accreditation is in process. It's happening. It's just not there yet. Don't know how much confidence we have in that, but that's the plan, I guess. Okay. Anybody else got anything more on that? We could just got a little. Sorry, George.
Yeah. The only thing I was going to say is that type of thing is going to make it a lot easier for the principal designer and the principal contractor to be compliant or to satisfy their responsibilities, I think, and the insurers.
Absolutely, and that organisation that Chris was talking about, I'd say up the page, is working on design accreditation as well now. Okay, there's just one little thing at the bottom about installers should use digital tools to ensure easy access to installation guides, which I think, Edward.
Just a very quick one on that, and it sort of carries on from the point that Pencho made, was actually what we need to see is their mandatory schemes which are UCAS accredited, so that they meet a certain standard with the right kind of audits in place. And that's the key bit, because I'm very aware there's some organisations out there, and they're going to remain nameless, that present themselves as accreditation services, but they're really not, because they don't maintain any real level of sort of standards, other than you pay them money and they'll say that you've been trained and certified to install fire stopping products.
Sure.
Okay, Jessica, do you want to go on to the next question? Okay, this is question 2. How do we ensure that the incomplete building services design does not impact construction? So the overall considerations on this were around stakeholder engagement, as in timely engagement with stakeholders, utilising technology such as 3D modelling, conducting gap analyses. There's also technology dealing with competency and compliance management. And the third section was on simplifying fire safety regulations. Okay, just do you want to scroll down? There we go. Right, the first thing is a clear project timetable. That one would think would be self-evident, but possibly not. Scroll down further. Okay. Yeah, it's accepting that things are going to cost. That to actually implement everything that's in the legislation and the guidance, it's going to cost. To do it properly, it's going to cost you money. And there's got to be a recognition by the industry that there's going to be a cost involved. And it's as simple and as complicated as that. Scroll down a bit more. Okay, Peter. And he's saying that basically the solution is in the technology. What he's saying, almost what you were saying, Rebecca, actually, if you've got it in a slightly different slant, if the technology's there and it's good, why do you need third-party assessors? George, why don't you answer that question? Why do you need third-party assessors if the technology is good enough?
I can't see how technology is actually going to do. I mean, this is about incomplete building services design, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the context of that.
Yeah, so that's not really the technology that's going to complete that, is it? It's just going to make it available what's been done.
Yeah, I think Peter misunderstood because it doesn't come from this industry. It comes from oil and gas.
Yes, yes.
And I think part of the principle here is that the building services element, if the building services design isn't completed before, for example, compartmentation is installed, I'm talking about dry lining and the like, the builder's work holes may well and probably will be in the wrong place or the wrong size. So the principle behind this, or the solution to this, that particular conundrum, which is a
Yeah.
common conundrum, is that the building services design needs to be completed before construction work starts. And that's really what that's about. So I don't think technology is a solution to that.
No, technology is a tool, isn't it? It's not an end result. Jess, do you want to highlight that?
Which one is that?
Unhighlight what Peter said, the first yellow block on Peter's.
Paul's got his hand up, Richard. Sorry.
Sorry? Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to get the thing up to date. Paul.
Yeah, I'll just say we have since Grenfell, we've been photograph evidence of every single fire stopping, passive fire protection measures, fire doors, everything onto Boris or Bolster. That's fantastic. Give you evidence that it's all done properly, but when you're reviewing it to make sure it's compliance, it takes a lot of manpower and resources to do that. Technology is only great if you've got somebody to check that it's actually correct, and I don't think AI is up to that at the moment. I think the main fundamental problem is not necessarily the evidence. It's having confidence in your contractors. I've been talking about third-party accreditations and everything else. That's great, but as long as you've got an industry that operates on a very low profit margin and things get hidden, crucial things get hidden during construction, there's an opportunity to cut corners to save money. And until that is resolved, we're still going to have this problem.
We've found that even with our very highest performing contractors in regards PFP, passive fire stopping arrangements, even with our very best, highest quality contractors, they still need careful management. There's no room for us to take a slightly more relaxed approach. That we have realised. You still need resource to do that.
The other challenge I would imagine is that when you're engaging with the client, John, with the contractor, you're probably dealing with the main contractor. The main contractor will then subcontract things like building services, and then this building services contractor will then subcontract some of the installation work and even the fire stopping. So you can lose a connection there, can't you?
Yeah, we've got and that loss of connection, is a loss of control. So we can't actually, we can make observations and such like, but we've got no control over it. That's the difficulty.
Right. What Peter goes on to say, which is again around accreditation and competence, is that competence is it's a continuum. It's not something that you take a test and that's it, because A, you forget things, and B, things change. So he's saying that the linking of compliance with competency and with the management of risk in one technology platform is an elegant way of possibly dealing with that. What about that one, George? Would you agree with that?
I don't agree with the one technology platform. I think Peter was saying that with the greatest respect is because he's selling a technology.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm a technology provider as well, but I wouldn't recommend that somebody just uses one technology platform.
Yeah, I remember in the meetings you said that quite clearly, didn't you? Absolutely not one platform.
Yeah, because as John's saying there, or sorry, as Paul is saying there, there's a range of different software applications that are very good at doing certain things. The problem is how they interface with each other. Boss is a good example of that. Sorry, go on.
So just after the meeting, unhighlight both of those comments, please.
Yeah, okay.
Can you scroll down?
Unless anybody else thinks so.
Does anybody else disagree with what George is saying around one technology platform? Okay, cool. Well, let's carry on. Right.
That's really my answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah, but basically it's about the standardization of the way data is held, so it's interoperable. Okay, just scroll more. People will be using different software applications for different purposes. And what we need to do is to make sure that there is an adequately robust ecosystem. So that again, I think highlights, reinforces what you said earlier. Scroll down, Jess. And again, back to the unique reference number, just like having a VIN number. Each building, not just assets, but each building has a unique reference number provided by the local council, so that any information will be stored under that unique reference number.
Could I just ask a question on this, the UPRNs? So there's obviously quite a few developers and owners on the call. The UPRNs generally, the UPRN as a term is managed by the Ordnance Survey for nationally for all properties. But each individual housing associations also use the term UPRN. And I wanted to just check whether it is the case that that's completely abstract from the Ordnance Survey UPRN, or whether there is some sort of alignment there. Pete, you're on mute.
Okay, that's another fiver in the box from me. No, it's a good question, George. I've worked for several housing providers, and the use of we'll call it the statutory UPRN, is not consistent across all organisations. Some organisations, when they use the term, they mean the unique property reference number that their housing system has given that dwelling cum block, and there can be different UPRNs, obviously, for the apartments and the blocks. Some organisations do use the statutory UPRN, so there's a level of inconsistency. And there's also a level of sometimes misunderstanding, because some individuals who aren't familiar with the statutory UPRN assume that the UPRN is indeed the statutory one, when on occasion it's not. So your statement is correct in that there's no consistency, and there's no mandatory or statutory requirement for housing providers to use that. They can use their own reference number that's on their housing management or asset management system. It brings a bit of inconsistency, because especially where the fire services are using the statutory UPRN, and then they're presented with a stock list and they don't match, and then you've got to explain why they're different. So yeah, it would be sensible. The VIN number comment is exactly that. If the organisations and the software providers linked or indirectly linked to the statutory UPRN, then would be in an easier place. Edge just put his hand up.
All I was going to say is that's exactly my experience as well. So I think that's probably fairly common. Some organisations use the national UPRN number and some don't, and they use their own internal numbers, and there's all the confusion around that. A lot of people don't realise there's a national system.
Why do they do that? It's a particular reason they would do that. Surely if there's a national system, it makes sense to use it.
It's beyond me,
I thought that maybe there was some.
But there might.
Reason.
I don't know all the workings of it. My only suspicion is that it might have been clunky at times.
Right.
Unlike a lot of other government systems,
Yeah.
maybe this one didn't work very well.
Yeah.
And I imagine on occasion, as you know, the statutory address list often there's a time lag between that being set up and the construction phase and completion phase of a building or a set of buildings. Don't start me on the meter point reference numbers as well and their association or lack of association with the UPRN. I suspect, and I don't know this for a fact, that there might well be some form of royalty that needs to be paid in order to use the statutory UPRN number, but that's just a suspicion. That's not a fact. That might be a reason that influences the use.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Okay. Scroll down just. Let's see what else we've got here. Okay. Right, this comes back to George's point around the building services design not being complete when construction starts. So the building services design needs to be complete before construction starts. Ed?
That was an inadvertent hand.
Okay.
Sorry, what happened?
He put it up accidentally.
Oh, right, sorry. Yeah. Oh, scroll down, Jess.
Don't talk about it again. It was an accident.
Okay. I promise we won't. But so the design itself needs to be completed earlier. Then the information that the products that are actually going to be used needs to be simple to be able to drop into the evolving design. Anybody on that one? And Peter again says that they use a methodology, a digital stage case. And again, about the continuum, this time of the golden thread in the construction project, as also to go through the stage gates. Okay, scroll down just. Okay, there needs to be clarity on what is being used for an overall design, because to actually change the standards in an exceptionally long process. Right, so this is around British standards and best practice guides and the consistent use of same. Anybody got anything on that one? That'll be a no. One thing we could perhaps, right, George, right, one thing we could perhaps be doing, looking more at scenario. Oh, yes. Looking more at scenarios so that we can see which of the building regs is. I mean, which of the building regs is being is relevant at each stage. You spoke about regulation 38, which is one of the key ones, which determines which asset types are critical ones. Anyone else? Sorry, George, go.
I was just going to say what we found over the last few years is the best way of getting knowledge exchange from people is to actually give them a scenario and ask them to use what they know to resolve the issues in that scenario. So that's part of what we're saying there.
Getting people to actually answer a question rather than fill out a blank form, kind of.
Yeah, but giving them a problem and then applying their knowledge to come up with the solution.
Okay, just scroll down. Right, now Paul's saying, well, we shouldn't be looking at changing the regulations, but we might need to simplify the guidance. Anybody got any thoughts on that one? Actually simplifying the guidance, but not the regulations. Firstly, simplifying the guidance. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. That's one person who thinks it's a good idea. So I'm assuming all the rest of you hate it. No, they will
I
not be
think perhaps a
drawn.
distinction needs to be made between making it clearer and
Yeah,
because it should only be as simple as it needs to be. Simple guidance is great if we've got simple buildings. If we,
yeah,
you know,
that's a
if we
good
turn
point.
back the
It's
clock
the
and
wrong
we go,
word, isn't
I
it? You're
think
right. It's clarity.
that's the important part, isn't it? Is clarity,
Yeah.
as opposed to simplifying. Reading
Jess,
the
can you
term
make a note on
simplifying
it?
as dumbing down, if you know what I mean. But I think clarity is. I think clarity is a better.
Yeah, just put clarity. I'll know what it is.
yeah.
Thanks. Actually, he's done that. Right. Okay, so scroll down again. Oh, of course. All right, yeah, nothing to highlight it, so keep going. Right, this is consideration at design stage. Wait, so we're talking about understanding the designer's duties and responsibility, having well-structured planning and design processes, which is echoing what was something earlier, the importance of a complete design, how to prevent design issues, and complete service design for better outcomes. Can you scroll down? See if we've got anything in yellow. We have. We need to map it. It's pretty clear. Need to map. Can you hear my dogs barking?
No.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, scroll down, Jess. Right, yeah, we need to have a more structured methodology of roles and responsibilities. George, you want to expand on that a little?
Yes. Yeah. So what we're really trying to do is to we're recognizing, aren't we, that the principal designer isn't designing everything and the principal contractor isn't building everything. So what the PDs I've been talking to, or a couple of them have said, is that they're looking at some sort of more structured way of saying what's expected of, you know, if an architect's PD, they're not the experts in structure. So therefore, there needs to be some sort of mechanism whereby they can provide the assurance to the PD as to the fact that they've carried out that work and also that it's complying with building regs. So there needs to be some method of doing that. I don't know if there's any designers on the call who are looking to provide that role. I mean, to some extent, even not, this is what Paul was saying earlier. If he's talking to people, you know, there's now a duty of care on clients to ensure that the PDs are competent. So how do you go about doing that?
That's the question, isn't it? That's what this is all about, this document, the how. How do we do that? Any suggestions? If you don't answer, I'm going to pick on someone. Who's going to volunteer? Pete.
So it's a topic, folks, that you'll you'll know is getting a lot of time at the moment. And of course, there are organisations. First of all, I'm client side. I'm not a provider of design details. And we've been knocking REBA's door. Of course, you'll know that REBA has a course out at the moment on PD associated with the building regs, and so do the building safety regulator. I think there was had one that was subscribed within 48 hours and was fully attended, and I think the next one is later on this year that's available. The REBA folks have issued a toolbox to help you navigate through that process. I'm doing the course at the moment, not because I want to be a principal designer, but because I want to understand the process as full as I can. There are views that the duty is more aligned with architectural practices, and there are views that the duty is better aligned with the PC, and the PC then subcontracts that out to a relevant competent practice. So getting back to your question, how do you do that? So I understand that the legal position is that you are, the client is expected to carry out due diligence to determine that the organisation that's providing that service of PD under the B-regs has organisational competence. And if the building safety regulator was in the room, he or she would say that you determine competence in the same way as you do for any other duty. And they will use the words, you've got to consider that they have the necessary skills, knowledge, experience and behaviours, which is a bit of a challenge because, of course, this is a new duty. It's not completely unfamiliar territory in checking competence, but it's purely about, I don't want to, I'll put it clearly rather than simply, but it's simple to me in my head. And that is check that the organisation has the skills, check that they have the experience, check that they have the knowledge, and document that. In the same way as if you're appointing a gas engineering organisation to carry out your gas services for the next 5 years, that's a standard process during the tendering process. But of course, the regulator is expecting you to do that at the outset and also during the course, so that if there are any material changes within the organisation, as client, you're making sure that those changes aren't having a detrimental effect on the competence. So let's pretend that it's being provided by 2 individuals within an organisation and they leave. So does that mean the organisation still has the competence? Well, yes, if they appoint someone else within that organisation that carries out the organisational duty to the contract and to the client. So simply, it's a case of checking those 4 things and evidencing that and reviewing it regularly. In the same way as you would for your old gas engineers. The organisation has got the engineers with the competence, and is it the same engineers that are doing that work during the course of a contract, which could last for 2, 5, or a development can last for 2, 5, or 15 years, depending on the scale of the scheme. So, put clearly, that's the best clear way I can put it. In the same way as you would consider any other professional appointment and determine the competence. And of course, sometimes that has been because they're the organisations that we've worked with for the past 10 years. We trust them, we know the practice, we know the individuals, and off we go. The expectation now, where the regulator in the room, is to evidence that that step has been taken and that you're regularly checking it to make sure that it's still as valid midway during the contract as it was at the outset. Hope that helps, folks. But we're away.
That was very clear, and I think very helpful actually. Has anybody got any comments on what Peter just said?
We've been reviewing that circumstance ourselves, and that's kind of the approach that we're taking, because we're looking at, we've got a compliant framework of contractors and consultants, and we're assessing the organisational competencies at that initial stage, and then assessing the project team members, if you like, at the individual kind of contract stage as well. We haven't got as far as the checks that we should be undertaking during the construction phase to capture any changes, the personnel changes and such like. So that's the approach we're currently looking at.
So this is what we're seeing is everybody's doing it slightly different. People have different approaches to actually getting around these issues. It's not it's all right. You've got to be compliant, so you follow the rules. But it's a question of how you do it, and that certainly seems to be varying a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, could I just say it'd be interesting, Pete, just to delve into that a little bit more. In that, one of our partners, or one of our long-standing contributors to BIM4Housing, is Steve Coppin. Now, you might know Steve, but he was the. Do you know Steve? He was at.
Yep, I know of the chap. Yes.
Yeah, so Steve ran the training courses for CIOB until very recently, and he stepped down from that because he doesn't agree with the way they're doing it. And what he's said is that this is a problem with all of the institutions, in that they're certifying and providing training for the individuals, but not for the companies. And he thinks it's understandable, because REBA's members are the individuals, aren't they?
Right.
But if you're working for a company, then no matter how good your competence and how diligent you are, unless the culture is right within the organization, that doesn't work either. So I'd be interested to know a little bit more.
Yep, and I think many organisations are trying to find their way with it, and of course the regulator won't state that this is the way you should run your business and this is the way that you should establish competence.
No.
Because they'll take the view, and rightly so, that we have organisational expertise in that aspect of it, so know how to do it. And I'll use the same analogy again about the gas engineer. The gas engineer is individually competent through his gas safe, his or her gas safe qualification. So, and that sits with the individual, not with the organisation. But as you say, there's got to be organisational competence. And as John touched on as well, what we're trying to do is map that process out to make sure that we can demonstrate that we've got a policy and a standard operating procedure in place that navigates that route and allows us to make sure that we can demonstrate the competence. Should we be called to demonstrate that step took place? So it's new, it's straightforward to me. I think what we're also going to bump into, if I've not mentioned this at a previous meeting, is where principal contractors and professional practices that are going to offer that service separately can position the appropriate level of insurance that clients are comfortable with under their standing orders and financial regs and insurance requirements under any tendering and pre-award arrangements. And I know John mentioned that he's looking at the framework arrangement. I'm about to reach out to our procurement team and ask if they will reach out to the existing framework, procurement framework members, and ask them if they can do a poll of those contractors and practices that are on the frameworks, and ask which of them are prepared to provide the PD duty on a consultancy basis or an appointment basis. Because as John will have known, the existing procurement frameworks doesn't feature PD under the building regs, because a lot of the framework arrangements were set up prior to that.
Yeah.
Great if you're looking for a generic fire engineer, if you're looking for a bit of general consultancy, if you're looking for design support, yeah, you'll get it, because that's an established process. Whereas this relatively new PD building regs duty hasn't quite made it in to the procurement framework. So I'm happy to share what I get back from that, folks.
That'd be very helpful, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Right, let's move on. Just, do you want to scroll down?
Just while you're scrolling, I also understand, George, that the JTC's suite of contracts will be updated and issued on the 17th of April.
I missed that, sorry. Which suite of contracts?
The JTC
Oh,
are expected to be released on the 17th of April. So and I think we're certainly, and I'm certainly interested to see what degree of inclusion of the new building safety obligations and the secondary legislation duties will now be incorporated in that. So I've not seen a pre-release of it. I'm aware that you can purchase a hard copy of the changes, but I believe that the changes document won't be available digitally. And understand that can be all pre-ordered for it to arrive on the 18th of April. So I think, like many other folks, we'll be pulling a few down on the 17th to work out what the differences are. So that may cater for the PD aspect of it as well, and may cater for many other aspects of it. I don't know yet. I don't know.
One of the things that's just worth mentioning is that I spent several years working on the integrated project insurance contract, which was a complete JCT were involved in that, Thomas Selford, but that is probably something that people need to be looking at now, because integrated project insurance removes the PI from the individual organizations and makes it a project PI, which is far more, it's a collaborative approach, and it means that there's no risk transfer, which is I think going to be needed in a lot of these new projects. If anybody's interested in learning more about that, just let me know.
Well, thanks, George. Thank you.
Okay, so the conclusions that have been come to on this section were basically that the design should be finalised before construction begins to avoid mistakes and uninformed decisions. Design changes should be kept to a minimum to prevent budget overspends. I can't imagine anyone disagrees with that. So scroll down, Jess.
Well, also the design changes should be kept to a minimum because under the change control process, you could end up with 6 weeks delay for each change, which that could be very significant.
But yeah, good point. That will now be added. Yeah, and this is another good one. The client needs to set out the very beginning the level of information that they and their consultants are looking for. It needs to be top down, and it's got to be digital. Scroll down, Jess.
I'm not sure that should be consultants. I think that's more supply. I think we need to take a look at that again, Richard, because I'm not quite sure that that's
right.
What
just make a note on that. Can you go back up?
Yeah.
Sorry. Right there, that one. Make a note.
Yeah.
To look at that. Thank you. Well, that's what this meeting's for, to correct these things.
Yeah.
There we go. Right, so the publication of a competency demand profile related to the project design should be required. Competency demand profile. And what level of competency is needed? Any comments on that one? Not competency on this one, isn't there? Right, scroll down, Jess. Right, this is about rethinking procurement processes. And Phil Thompson was saying it needs to be split in two. You've got the labour element of procurement and the product element of procurement. But again, they can be covered by improvement in identification and digital adoption. And we need to be helping the procurement team understand the implications of them maybe de-scoping something to save money.
Martin Oates that's mentioned there, he's from a manufacturer, but a manufacturer that also does design and installation. So he's from SE Controls. They make smoke vents. They make smoke vents, sorry, but they also design smoke control systems. Sorry.
No, scroll down, just. Right, so this comment is saying that procurement teams don't take account of design elements or the technical content unless they're explicitly given the information. So that's around briefing, isn't it? Anybody got anything on that one? You can tell it's getting late in the day, can't you? Hey, it's 7 o'clock here. Anybody else?
Where are you? Cyprus?
Greece, southern Greece.
Ah.
Okay, scroll down. Yeah, until you get to a yellow one. Construction stage considerations. So that's about the coordination between build and M&E design, and halting construction when it's necessary. And basically until design issues are resolved. Okay, so scroll down just until we come along something there. No, that's the lot. We didn't. Oh yeah, we didn't finish that question actually. We didn't have time in the meeting. That's why. So has anybody here got anything to say about that?
You want to ask the question again, Richard? What?
You scroll back up again, Jeff.
Yeah.
Right. About coordination between build and M&E design. That a lack of coordination can lead to compromises and potential dangers. This suggests that starting the process with modular builds can improve construction outcomes. There's quite a discussion on that, I seem to remember. So scroll down a bit. Sorry.
We've just got a couple of minutes left. Has anybody got any comments on that?
We do a lot of our work in regards dealing with those potential dangers and the retrospective changes to the actual installation arrangements in regards to M&E and such like. That's a big factor for us in regards notifying them and rectifying them before they're covered up and encapsulated and such like. Ceiling wall details and such like. That's always an issue for us.
And at the moment, you're capturing that as photographs, are you, John?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we do. We do it exactly like that. We evidence it, and then before and after shots by way of to record, you know, the completion of the remedial works. So yes.
And do you do that on jobs where you're the Section 106?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And it doesn't make you very popular, but yes, we do. We do it on every scheme.
Have you been doing it on Medius House?
Yes.
Okay.
But we got involved at the latter stages because sometimes with the 106s, the construction phase is well advanced.
Yeah.
And we come to the party late in the day, but we do our best to capture that on every scheme.
Okay, okay. Well, we're basically out of time. So thank you very much. We've got some good stuff out of that. We've got some good amends and corrections for this document. We've got next week the 4-question marathon day to go through ones that we've missed. Some of which we won't need to go through because you've already done them. So thank you very much indeed, and we'll see you next time.
Ed, can you hang on for 10 minutes?
I'll have to run, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Because we're really out of time. I've got to be leaving the door now.
Okay.
Cheers.
Would you have 5 minutes tomorrow?
Yeah, just drop me a line. Put something in. I'll just have a quick look at what my schedule is for tomorrow. If I can find my Outlook.